So you would have seen here on Newzroom Afrika last week the visit by governments of the Netherlands and Denmark, where a $1 billion green hydrogen fund was launched. Today, the Minister of Electricity, Dr Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, will sign a joint declaration of intent with the German Vice-Chancellor for green hydrogen projects. We take a look at the significance of these developments and the signing ceremony. We're now joined by energy expert Hilton Trollip. Hilton, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. It's so easy to get lost in the world of all of these agreements that are being signed for South Africa to have the just energy transition, because last year France and Germany gave South Africa a loan of some $10.7 billion. There's also another $8.5 billion agreement between the United States, the EU, France and Germany, again with South Africa. How should we understand today's signing ceremony?
So I haven't read the agreement. It hasn't been posted. But what they have said in the press release is that it's a signature of intentions. So Germany and South Africa are getting together and saying that they intend to cooperate in the development of the South African hydrogen sector. And just to comment on what the hydrogen sector is, it hardly exists at the moment. Hydrogen has been identified worldwide over the past 5 years as one of the central energy carriers and industrial feedstocks of a decarbonizing world. That's very important because it's not just in South Africa, but across the world. This hydrogen economy is not just being talked about, but is actually now not only being planned, but it's being built. One of the places that's leading in this is Germany. And one of the things about the hydrogen economy, from a South African point of view, is that it will be a global economy. And why that's important is South Africa's combination of potentially very abundant renewable energy, wind and solar, its platinum reserves, and the fact that you can make hydrogen out of this renewable energy very cheaply means that South Africa is one of the least cost locations in the world for this new decarbonized fuel and industrial feedstock. And I'm not sure how much time I've got, but the importance of these kinds of statements of intent for South Africa is, firstly, whilst we have a lot of technology, Germany has a lot of other technology too. And we need to be technology partners. They're a much bigger economy than us. They have a much bigger research and development capability. So it's important to have these partners, especially not only in the development phase, but in the trading phase, because we're going to be, Germany and Europe are short of decarbonized electricity and green hydrogen, and we can make lots of it, firstly here. And what we can do is we can take this hydrogen and use it to beneficiate our own minerals. And this is the holy grail in South Africa. It's not just exporting. For example, we export 80 million tons of iron ore at the moment. We just dig it out of the ground and send it abroad. What we can do is we can take hydrogen and we can make green iron and green steel completely and utterly emissions-free. And we can export that into a world where there is growing demand for green steel, and it gets a far higher price than the iron ore. And also, at the same time, we can manufacture the renewable energy equipment that will be used to make the renewable energy, to make the hydrogen, to add to the iron ore and make the steel. And this offers, we've modeled this, and this offers enormous positive opportunities for reindustrialization of South Africa, jobs, imports, exports, global partnerships.
That opportunity for reindustrialization is quite important. You speak of also exporting iron ore, where South Africa would take the lead on this. While this is incredibly good in the sense of when you read it on paper, but is there a method to the madness, Hilton? Because South Africa, we're looking at now hydrogen, which you say we've never done before. We don't even have. We've got gas, we've got wind, we've got solar. And so this renewable energy project, or this just energy transition, are we getting into so many deals, whether it be intent or indeed taking up loans? But is there a method to the madness where we know that by 2030 this is going to happen? I mean, recently Eskom's Kusile pollution rules were exempt to ease blackouts in the country.
So, Dudu, you bring up an important point. In other words, how does this building of an entire new industry fit into the other challenges that we've got? And the thing is, it can fit in very well. So, for example, ArcelorMittal, that's the ex-ISCOR, and now it's called ArcelorMittal. They are South Africa's, by far, biggest steelmaker, the only large primary steelmaker. They've announced a project to demothball a facility at Saldanha, which will be able to use renewable energy, making hydrogen, the hydrogen added to that iron ore. So remember, currently we just dig up the iron ore and export it. At a low price, it's still import revenues. What ArcelorMittal are going to do at their Saldanha, what they've announced they're going to do at their Saldanha facility, is they'll take the iron ore that's coming from Sishen, past Saldanha and being exported, and they'll take 1 million tons of that a year, and they'll turn it into steel, which is worth much more, lots of local jobs, reinvigoration of the local economy. Now the thing is, we can do that. Once that gets going, we can get some other hydrogen projects going, and what the Germans bring are technology, because ArcelorMittal, their experimental DRI plants, so this is this green steel. Their biggest one is in Hamburg, Germany. That's where the R&D experience is being gained. They also have another one in France, in Dunkirk. So they can bring that to us already working, and we can make it work. And once we've got one working, we can get many working. These things can be built, and once again, we will also then need investment. And so, of course, there's local investment, local investors, but South Africa can't survive only on its local capital availability. We need foreign investment. It's a reality. And once again, Germany is one of the biggest investors by far in South Africa. We know about, we make BMWs here, we make Mercedes-Benzes here, so a very important part of the automobile manufacturing. And just by the way, a lot of our coal-fired power stations and factories have got German equipment in it. But the Germans now are turning completely green. They've got their net zero commitments, and they can come and help us, both with finance, with technology, and then with markets for what we make.
You mentioned the word coal, and highways are developing potholes because they simply cannot take the amount of trucks that are flowing at Richards Bay, which are queuing up to export coal out of South Africa. And so how should we understand this, Hilton, for a country that has this resource, that is able to use it for now until we get to a stage where we can set ourselves up for hydrogen, gas, wind, solar? Where is it going to? And why is it that those countries that are encouraging the continent to move away from fossil fuels are importing coal?
So, Dudu, we're involved in a transition. And often people make arguments as though it all has to happen by tomorrow. But the same as South Africa, Germany still has coal-fired power stations. China, India, the UK closed their last one recently. But 20 years ago, if you'd told the United Kingdom they were going to close their coal-fired power stations, they would have told you were crazy. But that's it. They've made their last electricity out of coal. But it takes time. So while that happens, just people say, I hear this, people saying, why are we exporting coal? And we've got more coal in South Africa than we could burn in the next 200 years making electricity. There's no shortage of coal. The reason there are trucks, and it's a bit of an aside here, but it's linked to the whole Eskom and SOE thing. The reason the trucks are chewing up the roads going to Richards Bay is because the Transnet coal railway line isn't working. And the reason that the Transnet coal railway line isn't working properly is the same as Eskom's not working properly, and the post office is not working properly, and we had to sell SAA, etc. So there's a dedicated coal railway line that takes coal from the coal mines to the Richards Bay coal terminal and export it. Worked very, very well for years. It's got a 90 megaton per annum capacity, but it's only running at about 50 or 60 because of mismanagement. So that's a mismanagement issue. That's not we exporting coal and therefore we're short of coal locally. We're not short of coal locally. We only have stopped being able to deliver coal efficiently from the coal mines to the Eskom power stations, which is, once again, same causes of all of those. So we mustn't let this transition, well, let's get back to hydrogen. We mustn't let the opportunities offered by hydrogen and renewable energy and our minerals get held hostage by this nasty fight that's going on between coal interests and the renewable interests and various stuff around politics where they're starting to say that renewables are foreign and renewables are being forced on South Africa. That's absolute nonsense. I've been working on renewables for 30 years. South Africa has got all the talent necessary for us to plan an incredibly successful renewable sector, and we are involved in planning it here, the South Africans. It's not being forced on us. So we've got to take the opportunities, and I went to such an interesting event the other day where the Swedish ambassador said that he was from the labor unions in Sweden, and he said the labor unions decided in the 1950s that they should not be worried about new technology. They should embrace it. What they should be worried about is getting stuck in old technology. So it was the point of you mustn't be worried about being the first out of coal. You must be worried about being the last out of coal. And if we continue as we, and this is getting into coal again, but we're falling into this trap. Change is hard. Changing from coal to renewables is hard. But we can choose to do it on our terms, or we can fight a rearguard action and take getting out of coal as some ridiculous defeat instead of actually embracing renewables and planning how we transition out of coal at our own pace according to our own plans. But that will involve getting into renewables in a big way now, and at the same time planning the exit from coal.
Yeah. Hilton, the only thing permanent in life is change. And while we accept that, do we not need to be vigilant? Because transparency is also quite important. Information that is readily available for you and I to read, not just read. Maybe you understand hydrogen better than I do. But the layperson in this country can actually read. So when we talk about just energy, what is just about it? When we take a look at the affordability of the everyday person on the ground as well. And also just knowing the finer detail of these agreements. Just last year, $10.7 billion between France and Germany and South Africa in terms of loan agreements. What has since happened?
So that $10.7 billion, it's $8.5 billion, and it's called the Just Energy Transition Investment Plan. That plan was compiled by South Africans for South Africans. The history of that is President Ramaphosa went to the UN summit, climate summit, in 2019 and put a plan on their table. We initiated it for a deal for $11.5 billion. Subsequently, over a 2-year period, this was negotiated between partners. And firstly, similar to this statement of intentions today, 2 years ago, this Just Energy Transition Partnership, JETP, was born. It's between the EU, USA, and even though these are EU countries, France, Germany, and the UK, they stated intentions. South Africa then went away and, in a process, developed in South Africa the investment plan. There's no secrets in that. It's published on the Presidential Climate Commission website. But they are mischievous people. So we cannot see every single agreement. That's impossible. It's just there has to be some trust and there has to be some levels at which we see agreements. In the end, we want all agreements that aren't commercial to be transparent, but this false narrative that is being promoted, that secret deals are being made by nefarious foreign agents to force renewables on South Africa like we're some kind of guinea pigs. I'm sorry, there's no substantiation of these terrible slurring smearing slights on people. And this has become now a feature leading up to the election, because there is a let's just look at the coal side. You know that all of the coal supply contracts between very big coal companies in South Africa, Anglo has divested. The multinationals have got out of South African coal. It's all locally owned now by big investors. There are 5 big coal companies, South Africans, with huge political influence. All of the coal contracts, 70 billion rand per annum to supply Eskom, are secret. And it's those people now that are starting, when we start signing, like this recent, the deal with the Netherlands and Denmark a few days ago. There's a bit of a scandal with the president inviting Minister Mantashe to come to the signing ceremony, and him saying, sorry, he won't come because he hasn't seen the MOU, expecting us to believe that his department, that this long government process, they never heard of this MOU. It's just unbelievable. So there's a lot of mischievousness going on here to cause trouble. And this is why I say, when we sign these international agreements, we have all the processes. We've got DIRCO, we've got the Department of Finance, we've got the presidency in the end, that must ensure that we speak with government speaks with one unified voice. It's essential. And we can't have people coming in at the last moment in these processes and saying they weren't involved if they're cabinet ministers, because without some serious investigation into what happened. Because the Netherlands Prime Minister and the Danish Prime Minister came all the way to South Africa, but our Energy Minister couldn't get to the meeting. And that just leaves me as a South African feeling embarrassed at our government. And but I don't think that's going to happen at today's ceremony. I think they will sign, and we're going to get ahead, and we're going to make this hydrogen thing work as a country.
Also contentious and also curious, but we'll continue to seek answers. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Hilton Trollip is an energy expert.